tell me if this has ever happened to you. There was a fight in the lunchroom, and you heard from one person that one guy got decked in the face, but you heard from somebody else that somebody was throwing a chair and then they fell out the window. And by the time the day ends, everybody has a different version of the story, right? You heard it from one kid that the fight started because they threw food, and you heard it from somebody else that they insulted their mother. The point is that the stories are all different. And they may all be true in a way, but they may also leave out some important details. The problem is that everybody telling you the story is summarizing. They can't actually tell you everything that happened, so they just focus on the points that stuck with them. One person focused on the violence, so the chair flying across the room really stuck with them. But the other person was more interested in the drama, so why the fight started really stuck with them. And that's okay. That is called bias. Bias is your own personal leanings or interpretations, your preference for certain ideas, okay? So if you are a wealthy person, a story about how poor people are lazy really resonates with you, and you're more likely to read that story. Whereas if you're poor, a story about how the rich are performing illegal acts or avoiding taxes really sticks with you. And if you're somewhere in the middle, then everybody hates you because you're a little bit more objective, right? Objectivity is the goal of any good summary, or indeed any good retelling, right? You don't want to be biased one way or the other. So when you are giving a summary, you have to think about your own implicit biases. Are you more interested in hearing the truth, or are you more interested in hearing what will make you happiest? I can tell you already that you're probably more interested in hearing what will make you happy. So you may have to actively fight that. And you may have to try a little harder to focus on those objective details in that retelling. We're going to give you an example today of a story that includes a lot of details that you may want to leave in or leave out depending on who you are telling. Okay, so let's take a look at that right now. Here's how it went down. You and your significant other, your boyfriend or girlfriend, were sneaking out together. You stopped by a convenience store and stole some sodas and snacks to hang out all night at the basketball courts behind the school. You sunk 3 5-pointers in a row, beating your personal best, and impressed your significant other. While you were there, you heard glass shattering. At first, you were scared, so you hid. As you ducked behind the basketball court, you cut your hand on the chain-link fence. You looked around for an attacker, but then you saw a man running away from the school building and realized it must have been a thief. Quickly, you and your SO came up with a story and called the police. They got there in time and arrested the man for stealing a cart's worth of Chromebooks from the school, valued at over $10,000. Your parents, the police, a doctor, and your friends are all asking what happened. Okay, so here's how this is going to go. You just heard a story about something that happened to you. You didn't actually do this, of course, but you're going to put yourself in that position. Okay, if you have to, go back and listen to the story again and read what happened. What you are going to do now is think about what details you would tell the 4 people that came up to you. Your friends want to know, your parents want to know, a doctor wants to know, and the police want to know. Okay, obviously your friends want to know what happened because they're interested in the gossip. Your parents want to know what happened because they were worried about you. The police want to know what happened because they obviously just arrested a thief. And the doctor wants to know what happens because of your cut hand. Now, there are 4 people that you need to communicate to. One of them definitely needs an objective summary, meaning they get all the details. Everything you did, you have to tell them. So you have to pick that one person who you're going to tell everything to. The other 3, you may choose to tell certain details or leave certain details out. Okay? You should pause the video and think about which people you want to tell what details. Let's give this a go. We have the story up here, and we have the details to keep and the details to leave out. Now, which of these 4 people did you decide was going to be your objective summary? Let's think it through. Our parents. You could tell your parents everything, depending on what your parents are like. They might understand. They might have a few things to say about you sneaking out with your significant other. The doctor, he might need to know a lot of information, and if he does know that information, he can help you better. The police, now you tell the police that you stole something, they're of course gonna have to follow it up. And your friends. Now, of course, with your friends, you want to make yourself sound as cool as possible, right? So maybe you'd want to leave out the part about you hiding. So when you think about all of these three, which is really the most important for you? Personally, I would say the doctor is the one who needs the objective summary. This is the person who you can tell them anything you want, you can tell them the entire story, and they will not relay any information that is not medically relevant to anyone else. They're sworn to secrecy by doctor-patient confidentiality. So they'll say, okay, this person cut their hand, but how that happened isn't important. It is, however, important for the doctor to know how you cut your hand. A puncture wound versus a cut are treated very differently. If you cut yourself on a kitchen knife, they stitch it back up, no problem. But if you puncture your hand on a piece of rusted metal at a playground, that's going to be treated very differently. They're going to have to clean it. They're going to have to give you probably a tetanus shot. So that's very different. The doctor really needs, more than anyone else here, an objective summary about what happened if they're going to treat you properly. Okay. Now, some details to keep. Let's start with the details to leave out, actually. The details to leave out with your parents, right? You might, not sneak out. Maybe boyfriend or girlfriend wasn't there, right? You can come up with a lot of stuff there. Now, I'm not encouraging you to lie to your parents, obviously, right? But this is the type of thing that a person might do if they were afraid of being found out. That's my point, okay? I'm not encouraging you to do any of this, but what somebody might do or might say. Details to keep, I think one of the most important ones would be that you stole from the store. Now, you might think, excuse me, why would I want to tell my parents that I stole something? That's not great, right? Well, you're right, it's not great, but here's the thing. Shoplifting from a store, like most of the time, you're just going to be able to go back and say, hey, listen, I took this thing out of the store without paying for it. I'm very sorry. Here's the money for it. And it's over, right? The parents would be able to handle that transaction rather than like the police who may overreact or charge you or whatever. And you don't want that, right? So again, I'm not encouraging you to hide anything like that, right? But this is what a person might do in this situation. Objective summary should definitely go to the doctor. Now, your friends, details to keep, right? I mean, my 5 3-pointers, those would go in there for sure. Probably also the saving the school's Chromebooks. I think that's also an important detail. Oh, spelled Chromebooks wrong. That's ironic. I think that's also an important detail. But for my friends, I might leave out that I hid and was afraid. Personally, I would want to sound like, just like the coolest dude on the block, right? We don't need to keep going here. The point is that the details that you share with one person may not be the same details that you share with another because they're not relevant and they might not be interested, okay? Or you'd want to keep those details away from them. All of those are biased summaries, okay? They're summaries that leave out important details based on what you want the other person to hear, okay? Rather than an objective summary. So if you were going to communicate an objective summary to somebody, you would take this entire story and you would knock it down to just the most important details. So that's what I'm going to do now. Let's give the doctor an objective summary that's relevant, okay? So I'm going to highlight all the things that I want to share with the doctor, okay? So let's go. Me and my significant other were sneaking out together. I don't really think that's relevant, okay? Not that you couldn't give them an objective summary, but you know what? It's just, this isn't really a big detail, okay? You could just say that you snuck out from the house, okay? Let's see, you were at a convenience store. So you might want to say that you stopped by a convenience store. You don't really need to mention that you stole anything. Oops. sunk 3 5-pointers in a row. Probably don't need to say that, but you can say that you were playing basketball. That would probably be a relevant detail. You don't need to leave in that, I keep doing this. You don't need to leave in that you were, beating your personal record, because the doctor doesn't really care. You heard glass shattering. That's probably important for the doctor to know, right? You ducked behind the basketball court and you cut your hand on the chain link fence. That's the most important detail for sure. You saw a man running away. You called the police. They got there, and that's it. Okay. So this objectively summarizes all of the relevant details for the doctor. Okay. You're not hiding anything from him. You're being completely honest about what happened, but you're only including the details that really matter. Okay, so if I ask you for an objective summary of a text, you should provide all of the relevant details, but they don't need to be like, let's say that I asked you to summarize an adventure novel where a character travels from one city to another, right? How many days it took him to travel isn't important. You could just say he traveled from this city to this city. You don't need to say he traveled from this city to this city over 4 days on horseback. That doesn't matter, right? You're not hiding anything, but at the same time, you aren't including every little detail. This is a fine line to walk. It's a fine line to walk, and it's a little difficult to understand that deliberately leaving out details for the purposes of misleading somebody is an example of bias, or a subjective summary, and taking out details just because they don't matter is still objective summary. Okay, so your intention has almost as much to do with your actual work as it does in this case. All right, so hopefully this helped you understand the concept of summary a little bit better. I will see you all later, but for now, adios.